Hi everybody, Rob here from Pro Studios, and today I want to talk about lenses for the BMPCC4k. So over the years I've collected a lot of glass, and glass is as important if not more than any other aspect of what you're doing. So in this video I'm going to share just a few of my favourites for this camera after playing with it for the last few months. So some of these are going to be, this is going to be kind of the under £1,000 mark, or $1,000 roughly. And I'll do another video on more expensive lenses later, but actually even if you've got a very limited budget, you can make some really lovely images. So how I'm going to do this is I'll just whip through them all first and talk to you about them, tell you which ones they are, and a little bit about the spec, because they range from some lovely old metal bodied vintage lenses right through to more modern stabilized lenses. So I'll go through them, and then what I'll do is, rather than setting up like a chart, because that has some use, and you know, colour grids and everything, I'm not going to do that, because I think what we really use lenses for is making pretty pictures. So pixel peeping is fine for certain things, but I think really if you want to get a feel for what lens is going to work for you, then do you want to see the image. So what I'll do is I will swap them on to, I'm filming with the Blackmagic at the moment. Normally I film these videos with a GH5, but I think because I'm talking about the lens mounted on this camera, it's probably best for you to see the image on that camera. So what I'll do is I'll go through them all, and then one by one I'll swap them onto the camera so you can see what this setup looks like with each of those lenses on, because that's probably, I'm guessing, a more realistic way of being able to judge what I'm talking about. So a little bit on the setup. I've got the Blackmagic in a cage and it's just locked off on a tripod, and I've got a little Blackmagic video assist just so I can see what's going on. I have a light panel here, just a medium sized, and a little one off to the side, just some other lights at the back. But the settings here, I'm on ISO 400, and I'm shooting this in ultra HD on ProRes 422. Oh no, I'm on HQ, sorry. So you know what I'm doing, and the audio is being captured on a NTG3, which is about a metre away from me, just in front there. Okay, so let's start off with the lenses. Okay, now where shall I begin? I think really the workhorse lens. So this is one of the cheaper ones. This is the higher end of this range, and this is going to be the Lumix. This is the stabilized version, and this is the 12 to 35. I do also have the 14. I'm shooting on the 14 to 45, I think it is. But this one here, the 12 to 35, is the kind of the workhorse for this camera. It's a really good range. It covers your 24 to 70, and it's solidly built. It's mostly a metal bodied lens, although there are bits of plastic on it. But really what this is really good for, it's capturing that good range. It's a 2.8, and it's kind of light enough. You can stick it on a gimbal or a drone or whatever, but you get good quality image from it. But for the Blackmagic, the biggest benefit of this is not just those other aspects, which are all good, but it's the stabilization. And I think having that range covered with a stabilized image means that you can go out and you can handhold to a certain extent. The stabilization is very good, and I think this is probably, if you're going to pick up one lens, this is the one to go for. So that's my kind of number one choice, and it covers so much of what you might do. Okay, so let's move on. Now, I think my second choice, this is these really come as a pair, I think, and this is the Zeiss Jenna. I have two. I have the 29 and the 50, and these are both, I think both of these options are from the 70s. They're both Jennas. There's a lot of discussion about the quality of various different Zeiss lenses. These two are fantastic. 29, they're almost all really good. These are both 2.8 lenses, by the way. So they're not super fast, but when you see the images, they're lovely. Really creamy blurring from the backgrounds. The bokeh's great. They're very solidly built. They're both built like tanks. These are both M42 mount lenses, so they're just a screw thread. So I've just got adapters on there. Both metal bodied, simple adapters. You don't have to worry about expensive ones. There's no electronics being passed through, so just solidly built. I'm using FOTGA adapters here. Okay, so they both have really good focusing. The controls on them are lovely, smooth, solid. I've got a couple of the 50, and one of them is a bit, they're a bit hit and miss. I've actually tried probably 5 or 6 over the years, and some of them are really good, and some are not quite so good. So you've just got to kind of take a chance with them. But they're very, very cheap. You can get these for under $100, but they look beautiful. And when I stick them on the camera, you'll see just quite how good they look. So I would definitely recommend these as a pair, 29 and a 50, both fantastic lenses. Okay, next up is kind of a bit of a beast. It's the Voigtlander 17.5, and this is the 0.95, and again, solidly built. This is it's like a tank. It's all metal construction, super wide, lovely. It's got real kind of personality, this lens. You'll see when I stick it on. This is one of the wider lenses you can get, and one of the faster lenses you can get for micro four thirds, which brings me on to that. I'm only talking about lenses that are easily adaptable to micro four thirds without using a Metabones or something like that. No Viltrox needed. I think that's important when you're starting out, because if you're buying this camera, and part of the reason you're going to be buying it is because it's reasonably cheap, and I don't want to then have to spend, or recommend you spend another £500 on an adapter, as well as, £1,000 on a lens. Okay, so this lens again is slightly different in its mechanism to other lenses. The aperture ring is at the front, but it's a beautiful lens. It does have a few issues. Well, they're not issues, but they're things to realise. You get wider open, you get very soft edges. You also get quite a lot of magenta fringing on real high contrast areas. Now, some people think that's a bad thing. Personally, I don't mind. I think that's just personality, and we buy lenses that have a little bit of personality, and they add a bit of romance and joy to our scenes, and I think that's really important. So I wouldn't worry about it. If it works for you, it works for you. And that's the same with anything, really, isn't it? Some things look great. I do visual effects in 3D, and a lot of my time is spent trying to add in imperfections. So if I look at my virtual lenses in 3D, I'm adding chromatic aberration, and I'm adding fringing, and I'm adding all of these things in to make it look like a more organic image. So don't worry about that sort of thing too much. So next up, and this is an odd one, I've only just recently got this, and I just wanted to try them out because I heard a lot of good things, and I'd heard a lot of bad things. And this is this tiny little guy, and this is a 7 Artisans, and this is the 35 at 1.2. I'll just bring that a bit closer so you can see it. Hopefully that's focusing for you. So this is a tiny little lens, but so far I'm very impressed by it. It's metal bodied, it's got lovely action to it. The focus ring and the aperture ring are both, they feel really good. It's nice and wide for this mount, and it's a native mount, so that's good. I think the less in the way of components joining other components and adapting, the better if possible, and having a wider lens this size is really good. Also, something to note, and I'll just gloss over this a little bit, but having a wider field of view on a non-stabilized body often helps to hold by hand. If you're doing handheld shooting, run and gun stuff, a wider lens will get rid of some of that jerkiness, if you weren't aware already. I'm sure most of you are, but just thought I'd note that. So that's kind of my choice of my top 5 lenses. I'm going to do one bonus one, and this is purely because, for the same reason actually, it's so wide that it doesn't matter too much about the lack of stabilization in the camera, and that's this. And this is the little Pancake 14mm, and this is I think it's 1.7. Yeah, this is a 1.7 from Panasonic, and this is so light and so small that you can pop it on, you can just leave it in a pocket. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even count as gear that you have to carry, because, look at it, just stick it in your pocket, go, I could put it under my hat and it'd be fine. It's very light. It's not stabilized, but doesn't matter. It's so small, so wide, and having this is a 22mm equivalent is good to have, especially for those real super wide establishing shots. So that's my choice of lenses. I'll just turn the camera off and I'll switch through them, and I'll do a little bit of recording just telling you which lens it is, and then you can pause and compare and do what you like. Okay, so right, let's get this off. Okay, so this is the Lumix G 12-35. and you can see it's got a wider field of view than I was shooting at 25mm before, on the previous lens, which was the 14 to 42. So what I'll do is I'll just come forward and I'll zoom in to 35, which will put me about here. Now I'm probably gonna have to get closer to keep this in focus for you. So this is, you know, it's a good lens. It covers a good range. So this is the Lumix G 12 to 35 at 35mm end. I'll swap this out now and we'll get the next one on. Okay, so here we go. This one, you can see this is a bit brighter. I haven't adjusted the exposure actually. I probably should. I'm just looking at my viewfinder here, and so this is the Carl Zeiss, and this is the 29 2.8, and you can see already. I think you can probably tell the difference in the background blurring. The separation is really quite beautiful. I love this lens. I think it's really good for medium shots, as you can see here, and it's interesting to compare. This is a lens for, I think I got this one for, it's probably $70. It's so cheap, but so lovely and built to last. You know, this has already lasted 40 years, and I'm pretty sure it will carry on. So let's get the other Carl Zeiss on. Okay, so I'm just going to crouch down. Field of view on this is much more narrow. This is the Zeiss Jenna 50mm 2.8. Again, beautiful lens. Background separation is lovely. It's such a creamy lens. Really love this lens. It is a narrow field of view, so you have to deal with that, and you have to kind of block out everything accordingly. But I think it's a lovely lens. So let's move on to the next. Okay, let's find my focus point. This is still too bright. So this is so wide open that I'm just adjusting my exposure here. Okay, still pretty hot, but this is the 0.95 17.5mm Voigtlander. You can see really good wide field of view, and it's a beautiful lens. So I think you can probably tell that there's a very different feel from this to the Zeiss lenses. They both have that kind of vintage look and feel about them, but they're quite different, and I'm not sure which I prefer. This is £1,000 lens. You can get one of them for 50 quid, and I'm not sure. This is built to last, and it does go super wide, so it's a very fast lens. It's really good for those kind of low light shots, so don't dismiss it just because of that. It may cost 10 times as much, but in some cases that's really going to pay off. Okay, so let's have a look at the little bonus lens. Oh no, we've got the 7 Artisan, so let's whip that one on. Okay, so this one is the 7 Artisans. Let's just find, so the depth of field is quite shallow, so I'm trying to find my marker on the floor so that I'm not blurry while I'm recording this. Again, I'm not changing anything. I should probably just, if I come back in here, just dim that light down a little bit. So this is a newer panel that I'm using, or newer, however you want to pronounce it. There you go, it's a bit better. Okay, so it's about £120, I think, so it's probably $150 thereabouts, and it's again, it's built so well, metal bodied, the glass all looks really good. I do think there's a tiny little bit of fringing, wide open right at the edges, but nothing crazy. And I think this is a 1.2. Let's just have a quick look. Yeah, this is a 1.2, so the background separation looks really good. Really, that's all I'm after. So in another video, I've talked about the blackmagic, and just talked about how we really kind of fall into the trap of talking about having super shallow depth of field all the time. And yes, that can look really good, and as much as I say don't worry about it that much, it has its uses. So if you're going to use it, you may as well have something that looks nice as you're using it. And I think this particular lens, as much as or as little as I've used it, looks really good. I'm just looking at the video assist at the moment, and I think it looks rather nice. I think the outer focus areas are nice and smooth. There's nothing too untoward. I think the colour rendition is quite nice. and I'm pretty pleased with it. I think it's a nice lens for that kind of a money. And I'm going to investigate in some of the other models they do, because they do one wider and they do a few with a slightly longer focal length, so it might be worth investigating them, because if you can get this kind of quality, maybe I lucked out, maybe I've got a good one, but if you can get this kind of quality with that kind of money, you could spend the price of the Voigtlander and you could cover your whole focal range, and not quite so fast, but not far off. 1.2 is pretty fast still, and this is a really good low light camera. I'm actually shooting this at ISO 120 with the light turned down, because again, it's a fast lens. I should probably have done that with a Voigtlander, but you get the idea. So I'll swap on to the last one, which is the 14mm pancake lens. Okay, so I think I'll probably have to turn my light back up a bit for this. Now we're looking. Okay, so this is 1.7, which is still, you know, reasonably fast, especially for such a cheap little lens. Field of view, you can see most of my room with this 14mm. It's again, it looks a bit of a mess, so apologies for that. I'm guessing you can see this is my little rim light here, which is just off to the side, and it'll be massively blown out, which is, you know, it's fine. It is what it is. So that's my 1.7 14mm, no stabilization, but it's a reasonable quality little Lumix lens, really good for sticking on a gimbal, something like that, if you're looking to get close to your subject but still keep that kind of environmental element of your shots. So these are my kind of top 5 cheaper lenses. I say cheaper, £1,000 for a Voigtlander is not cheap, but it's still, you know, we're not talking cine lenses yet. I'm going to do a follow-up video probably in a few weeks, because I've got a few other videos I want to do about rigging and various different things. I want to do a review of the camera itself, now I've been using it for long enough. I want to do a review of the Moza Air 2, and if there's anything else you want me to talk about, please let me know. I'm also going to do a comparison on audio, and I think that's probably of interest to a few people. This is an NTG straight into the using the Blackmagic XLR converter cable, so it's phantom powered and using a different preamp to the last video I did, which was using a lav mic on a wireless system. Okay, please subscribe, like, let me know what you do like or not about these videos. I don't just make them for myself, as much as they're an interesting record for me to go and look at. I think it's quite interesting to talk to you guys. The last videos had loads of comments, and I think some people agreed, some don't, and that's kind of good. That's what the internet's all about. It's about sparking debate and helping each other out, finding different points of view, and just kind of like being a part of a decent community. So please let me know what you want to see next, and over and out. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.